you have to give the Democrats credit for one thing, and that's a healthy dose of gall. Both the House and Senate Democrat leaders were out last week claiming that they can't fund the government until, get this, we solve the, quote, Republican health care crisis, end quote. That's right, the Republican health care crisis. It is truly amazing how a program Democrats created and tax credits that they chose to sunset have now become the Republicans' crisis. Republicans, in fact, never had anything to do with it. Democrats created Obamacare alone. They implemented the enhanced tax credits alone. And they chose a sunset date for those tax credits alone. Democrats are solely responsible for the Obamacare tax credit cliff. And yet they're trying to pin this disaster on Republicans while at the very same time they're asking Republicans to bail them out. It's really kind of ironic, Mr. President. Well, Democrats may not win a lot of points for truthfulness, but you have to give them credit for gall. Now, Mr. President, while Democrats may have created this health care situation, I have made it clear from the beginning that Republicans are willing to have a discussion about how to address it. In fact, I'm perfectly willing to guarantee Democrats a vote. But none of that is going to happen until Democrats reopen the government. We're not going to negotiate on anything until Democrats stop holding government funding hostage. And if they really want to address their Obamacare mess, they should stop running out the clock on a deal. And all they're doing by that action, Mr. President, is keeping the government shut down and enhancing, believe it or not, the chances this situation doesn't get fixed because the clock is running. Now, Mr. President, before I leave the subject of health care, I do have to mention the irony that while Democrats claim they're defending Americans' health care, their shutdown has actually suspended valuable health care services for a lot of Americans. Medicare and rural patients are currently dealing with the elimination of telehealth services thanks to the government shutdown. Telehealth, of course, increases the accessibility of care and lets those who live far from medical treatment or who otherwise struggle to travel to conduct prescription refill appointments or other visits from the comfort of their home. But that assistance is currently being denied to them thanks to the Democrat shutdown. But I'm not sure why I'm talking about shutdown costs. Democrats have made it very clear that they don't care about the costs of the shutdown to anyone. Democrats used to care, of course, or so they claimed. In fact, I could fill a book with Democrat quotes on how shutdowns harm hardworking Americans. But over the past 3 weeks, it's become clear that Democrats' previous concerns had more to do with politics than with principle. Democrats were against shutdowns when it served their purposes, and now that it serves their purposes, or so they think, to keep the government closed, they're all for shutdowns, no matter how many Americans have to suffer in the process. Well, Mr. President, I've talked about health care today, and Democrats would definitely like Americans to think that that's what this shutdown is about. But of course, the biggest driver of the shutdown is not health care or any other issue. It's the Democrats' far-left base. Left-wing activists demanded a showdown with President Trump, and Democrats fell in line. That's why you see the Democrat leader, who actually voted to fund the government in the spring, leading the shutdown brigade this time around. Far-left groups were rallying this weekend, and the Democrat leader and other Democrat senators were out paying homage. And if these same left-wing groups have their way, Democrats will be keeping up the shutdown for a long time to come. They don't really care about the solution, Mr. President. It's about politics. For the sake of the American people, let's hope that there are some Democrat senators who will eventually put the needs of their constituents over the demands of their far-left base and work with Republicans to pass the clean, nonpartisan funding measure that is saying right here in front of us today. And when passed, will be sent to the President and signed into law, and this government will open up again. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
So, Mr. President, we enter another week of Donald Trump's government shutdown. And Republicans seem happy not to work, happy not to negotiate, happy to let health care premiums spike for over 20 million working and middle-class Americans. Our country is staring down the barrel of a health care catastrophe, and Republicans will spend this week either vacationing or holding pep rallies at the White House. It's been over a month since the House of Representatives even took a single roll call vote. That's shameful. That's derelict. Government workers must work without getting paid. House Republicans get paid without working. What about the Democrats? Our position remains the same. We want to end the shutdown as soon as we can and fix the ACA premium crisis that looms over 20 million hardworking Americans and many tens of millions more whose premiums will also go up. Look, the ACA premium crisis is not a fix-it-later issue like Republicans keep pretending it is. It's a fix-it-now issue because very soon Americans are going to have to make some really difficult choices about which health care plan they choose for next year. When they see the amounts of money, when they see the increase in the number of dollars that these premiums will cost them because the tax credits expire, $500 a month, $600 a month, $1,000 a month for older couples in the over $20,000 a month, they're going to have to make an awful choice. Do I cut out health care altogether and be left alone? Or do I cut back on everything else to afford a health care plan? Do I have to look for a new plan with different doctors, different hospitals, higher copays, higher premiums? Every American, just about every American, or so many Americans, tens of millions, are going to have to start making that choice the next month. Health insurance prices under the ACA are now available in about a dozen states, and Americans in those states are already seeing with their own eyes the horrifying truth, what we've been warning about for months, that multiple millions of people are going to pay tens of thousands of dollars more for health care, so vital to Americans. When you are in a family and you know you can't provide health care for them or a much reduced health care, and you look at your spouse, you look at your kids, and you say, what am I going to do if they get sick? What a frightening experience for people that Republicans are putting America through, all because they wanted to cut Medicaid and cut so much else in health care to pay for tax cuts for the wealthy. It's just perverse. It's inside out. It's upside down. And let's be clear about who will get hurt if these tax credits expire. Republicans have been lying about that, too. If the ACA premium tax credits expire, the majority of people who will pay more out of pocket are working and middle-class families. In fact, the majority of people who benefit from the expiring tax credits live in Republican districts. The state of Louisiana, home of Speaker Johnson, is one of the states about to suffer most. I read an article last week from CNBC. It said, the headline, ACA enhanced subsidy lapse could hit early retirees hardest. Middle-class couples in their 50s and early 60s who were too young to qualify for Medicare face the largest dollar increase in premium payments. One Idaho couple interviewed by CNBC will see their premiums spike not by 50%, not by 100%, by 300%. $15,000 more a year just to have health insurance. That's what financial ruin looks like. In fact, if these tax credits expire, older Americans could end up spending 30% of their income just on health care premiums. Can you imagine? What kind of country do we live in? What kind of party is this Republican Party that is unwilling to solve this problem, which is staring Americans in the face, frightening Americans from one end of the country to the other. And yet Republicans, what are they doing about it? Nothing. They're on vacation. It's unacceptable and morally repugnant. Democrats are demanding nothing more or less than what the overwhelming majority of Americans already want. Even a majority of MAGA voters want it. 58% of those who voted for Trump say renew the tax credits on into next year. Americans want to keep their health care costs low and avoid financial ruin. Americans want to see the government reopened as soon as possible. And Democrats agree, we're at the ready. We want to get past this crisis, but Republicans need to wake up from whatever dream they're in, because fixing the ACA will require them to take action. Now, on the economy. Republicans like to talk about eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. Well, they can start by looking at Secretary Kristi Noem's expense report. This weekend, the New York Times reported that the Department of Homeland Security has purchased not one but two private jets, luxury jets, for Kristi Noem to the tune of $172 million in taxpayer dollars. The administration says these are G700 aircraft. That's one of the biggest planes there is, private planes there is. And they say they were purchased for safety reasons. Kristi Noem and the administration say these G700 aircraft were purchased for safety reasons. That's like saying you bought a Rolls Royce to get good seatbelts. This just shows you how much contempt this administration has for people struggling to make ends meet. Let's be very clear. At a time that Americans are paying more for groceries, falling behind on car payments, seeing their electricity rates go up and up and up, Secretary Noem thinks it's a good use of taxpayer dollars to buy two jets known for having, quote, the most spacious cabin in the industry. Whatever happened to the Kristi Noem who said any expense at DHS over $100,000 needed her personal approval? Apparently, she wanted more legroom for flying. This would all be perhaps a little more amusing if it wasn't so insulting to the American people. Because while Donald Trump's cabinet secretaries get their private jets, the American people are getting higher health care premiums, higher grocery costs, a worsening job market. Let me just show this chart, a list of awful headlines about the economy just from last week or so. From NBC, U.S. consumers bearing more than half the cost of tariffs so far, Goldman Sachs says. In the Wall Street Journal, grocery prices keep rising. Frustrated consumers are trying to adapt. Market Watch, high inflation and lack of jobs leave Americans frustrated with the economy. Those are headlines last week. So let me get this straight. Americans pay 90% of the cost of Donald Trump's tariffs for more groceries. They see fewer jobs, and now the American people have to pay for two top-tier private luxury jets for Kristi Noem. If you want to know how much contempt Donald Trump has, how much contempt his MAGA administration has for working people, look no further than Noem's luxury jets.